Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports.
The business of sports can be intimidating or hard for a startup to break into.
We really appreciate when our owners are actually there, with us through the journey.
Teams, ours especially, have been very intentional to diversify at all levels of the company.
I think we're in the golden years for the NFL and college football.
Our demographic reach has continued to expand.
This is going to be really unlocking the streaming platform for sports fans.
Sports valuations are rising. We'll see when they peak.
You don't have to be the best in your sport to make a whole ton of money.
Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore all the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Damian Sassower, along with some very special guest hosts. We have with us today Bloomberg Originals' own chief correspondent, one Jason Kelly, and his partner in crime, Bloomberg Originals' own sports correspondent, Vanessa Perdomo. Michael Barr and Scarlett Fu are off this week. Coming up on today's show, we'll talk with Frank Ryan. He's Global Co-Chair, Global Co-CEO, and America's Chair at DLA Piper. He's an expert in sports strategy and law. We'll talk with him about the latest moves in the sports media landscape and how he's seeing the impact of NIL on college sports. We'll also talk with former New York Knicks and Los Angeles Lakers Director of Performance Mubarak Malik about his new all-natural premium sports drink and how he's getting it into the hands of NBA players and their teams.
My pitch to athletes and teams is like, look, I sat in that role for 12 years. I have a master's degree, in human performance. I spent, all this time with the Knicks with excellent people and just players. And if I didn't leave the game to create a company that I felt like was better than, the pundits that we have seen over the years, it would be me giving you this product.
All that and more is straight ahead on the Bloomberg Business of Sports. But first, we head to Texas, where Jerry Jones has had an up and down year. We are joined by Bloomberg Texas Bureau Chief Julie Fine. Julie is following it all, and now she's here to talk us through it. Julie, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's begin with Jerry Jones and the loss of his $240 million quarterback. What's going on down in the Dallas area? I mean, it must be a lot of tears.
Well, this is not the season everybody had hoped for, especially Dak gets this massive contract extension. Everybody goes in feeling good. And now they are 3-6, haven't won a game at home. Clearly not a good time for the Dallas Cowboys.
He finally got his contract. Jerry Jones and Dak were going back and forth on this for a while, and then they finally get it. He gets hurt. Do you think him coming back is going to be easy? Do you think they're going to start looking forward to the future?
Well, I think they have to look forward to the future because you've seen Cooper Rush play so far, and it hasn't exactly been stellar. I certainly think that's something that are going to have to think about for sure. Dak is done for the season. So they've got a lot of issues there. They have to be thinking about the future. They also, if you're the coach of the Dallas Cowboys right now, it can't be a great time.
Let's talk about the Cowboys as a business and the center of the zeitgeist and all the things that they and especially Jerry Jones bring to the party. They're not only having to deal with personnel issues, they're having to deal with infrastructure issues, literally questions about curtains and sunlight. How does that all play into the feel there in Dallas around the Cowboys? It feels like, I dare say, they're sort of the gang that can't shoot straight in terms of getting it right for the fans. And this is a franchise that's known for being literally America's team. What's happening in your estimation?
Jay, you've been to that stadium. It set the gold standard for what stadiums should be. When that place opened, people could not believe it. How do you not plan for sunlight?
Right.
Let's start with that. When you're having such an awful season, you don't want to be talking about curtains. You don't want to be talking about issues like that. So structurally, not the question that Jerry Jones wanted to face when he left the game the other evening. Mike McCarthy was asked about that yesterday during his news conference. Somebody said, hey, you don't have to deal with curtains, but Are you going to open the roof? What are you going to do differently? He goes, do you think it'll help us win? I mean, that's where they are right now. So obviously for a team that spends this much money trying to win and trying to have a product that nobody else has, don't want to be talking about curtains in the middle of a 3-6 season.
So, Julie, you're on the ground there in Dallas. I mean, talk to us about Bill Belichick. I mean, I've heard some news that he might be under consideration as the next coach of the Dallas Cowboys, but we all know he's pretty difficult to work with. Do you see any potential for him and Jerry Jones to right the ship down there in Dallas?
Well, those two would really have to get on the same page very quickly. And you know, that's two very large personalities. Jason, you've spent time with Jerry Jones, so you know it's a very large personality. We hear Bill Belichick's name all the time here around Texas. I mean, people have been talking about Bill Belichick since last season when the Cowboys had such a short playoff run. People were already saying, why is Mike McCarthy coming back? There was talk earlier in the season. Do you think he will get fired after this game? I expect to hear Bill Belichick's names. I expect to hear a lot of names after this season.
Do you think, though, it's just about getting a new head coach in there to turn around this team? What else do they need to really get things right on the football field?
Well, I mean, they need backup for Dak. Look what's going on right now. They look at the scoring or lack of scoring for this team. So they need to certainly make sure that they have a very strong backup quarterback, and they have got to have a head coach that really is able to handle this when something like this happens. Listen, this is known as America's team. If something goes on, you are going to have above average amount of press following your every move, and you are going to have an owner/general manager who is not afraid to say what's on his mind.
All right, so I'm going to bring in Julie, and yet. This is the world's most valuable sports franchise. It continues to be, despite the fact that they haven't won a Super Bowl in 30 plus years. So you know this better than anyone. You and I were interviewing Jerry Jones and Roger Penske just a few weeks ago, talking about this big IndyCar race they're going to bring down there. They have the state-of-the-art Star, the practice facility plus that everyone in the NFL is trying to copy. What is it that, despite everything we've been talking about for the last few minutes, what is it that basically allows them to ride through it and still be worth as much as they are?
That stadium sells out every game. And don't forget, and Jason, you know this, it's not just a football game going on there. You've got business being conducted. Yep. You have stars coming through. You have politicians coming through. It is the allure that they have managed to build and build. Listen, now you've got the cheerleaders. They've got their own show that's very well watched. Now it's going for a second season. What they've managed to do is continue to build this brand nationally and internationally. So even when the product on the field is subpar, they're still selling out and everybody is still talking about them. When you look at the national games in the time slots that the Dallas Cowboys get, they're getting them no matter what the record is.
So, Julie, I just got to ask this question. I mean, is Deion Sanders coming to Dallas? I mean, do you think there's any way they tank through this year? I mean, how great would that be? I mean, him running around the side. I mean, now that would sell. I mean, if there's a valuation, 10.4, is that what we're at? Oh, my God, Sportico. I mean, you got to believe that Deion's going to at least increase the enterprise value of that franchise, no?
It'd certainly be a financial decision. I think, Deion, again, you're getting into the Bill Belichick situation. That's some very big egos working together in the same industry. But people love to talk about Deion. People love Deion in Texas, or in Dallas specifically. Deion is a huge deal here. Do I think he could be the Cowboys' next head coach? I think it really depends on where they end up at the end of the season. I mean, if they're such a mess, I think it'll be difficult to bring in Deion, but not impossible.
All right, Julie, let's go to a slightly different neighborhood in Dallas where there's a lot happier ownership group. That's the Hunt family. They own the Kansas City Chiefs. They are undefeated. They have found a way to win every single game. They're going up against your Buffalo Bills this weekend. I don't need a prediction on the matchup, but I do wonder, because you know this better than anyone, you know these two families so well, what's the business difference between the two of them that maybe has allowed the Chiefs to be such a successful, although lower valued franchise, but, going for a three-peat in the Super Bowl?
Well, I think, first of all, that let's talk a little bit about Andy Reid. I mean, Andy Reid came there knowing how to win a Super Bowl. Sean McDermott, you've got a little bit difference in a coach there. I think why they've been able to win is because they have won. They know how to win. They know how to keep going towards the end of the season. It's interesting because the families are actually friendly. They both have massive amounts of respect for each other. The Buffalo Bills, though, they just have trouble getting past the Kansas City Chiefs. And I wonder at this point if it gets to the point in the playoffs where mentally it's just so difficult for them to overcome. Because if you remember, Buffalo generally tends to beat the Chiefs during the regular season. Now that I've said that, they'll probably lose like 100-0 on Sunday because you know that we are a very cursed football team. Being from Buffalo, I can tell you that. But I just think that the Chiefs, also because of Andy Reid, they know how to win. I don't think it's a question of money and what they're spending on players because both have great players. I mean, you're talking about two great quarterbacks, but I think it's the mental component that they know how to do it year after year.
And the refs have nothing to do with it whatsoever. Julie Fine, let me ask you this, Julie. Our Texas bureau chief, Bloomberg News, Julie Fine. Who should I be? I mean, my fantasy team is so bad. I mean, you are so good. I mean, come on. I mean, okay, so maybe it won't be Josh Allen. It may be somebody else. But I mean, these Buffalo Bills look pretty hot. 7-2. They're gonna run away with the East here. So
just don't say it. Just don't say it.
I mean, coming from a disgruntled Jets fan.
Every time we win a big game, I'm like, just let's not talk about it. Like it's the more the buildup. They go into every season and they're like, the Bills, they're really hot this year. I'm like, don't say it. Don't say it.
Julie Fine, Bloomberg News, Texas bureau chief. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Bloomberg Business of Sports. We really do appreciate it.
I was so excited to do it. It's a great show. Jason Kelly, we work together all the time. I'm so happy that I got to do this with the three of you. I really appreciate it.
Our thanks to Bloomberg Texas bureau chief Julie Fine for joining us. Still to come, we talk with DLA Piper's Frank Ryan, an expert in sports strategy and sports law. For my colleagues Jason Kelly and Vanessa Perdomo, I'm Damian Sassower, and you're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Damian Sassower, along with guest hosts Bloomberg Originals chief correspondent Jason Kelly and his cohort Bloomberg Originals sports correspondent Vanessa Perdomo. Michael Barr and Scarlett Fu are off this week. We dive into a lot of specific headlines, but today we wanted to get a 30,000-foot view of the sports media landscape because there have been some big changes in the college ranks with NIL and more. To do that, we'd like to welcome one Mr. Frank Ryan. He's global co-chair, global co-CEO, and America's chair at DLA Piper. He's an expert in sports strategy and law. Frank, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Great to be with you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Frank, I'm sitting here next to Vanessa Perdomo, and she's chomping at the bit here because, we're looking at, women's soccer. We're looking at women's sports in general. We're looking at, women's basketball, the WNBA. I mean, we're looking at the valuations of all these teams, all these franchises, all these arenas and stadiums that are being built. My goodness. Tell us about the surge in women's sports viewership and what it means to DLA.
Listen, it is a critically exciting time in sports in general, and especially for women's sports. We've had the benefit of watching some of the greatest athletes ever compete now with women's athletics, and you're seeing what that is doing for viewership. I would tell you it's not new. It's been happening over a period of time, but the explosion in the last few years is something really exciting to see, and that will result in greater economic return for those athletes, which is also very exciting to see.
Do you think, Frank, when we've seen this new record media deal for the WNBA, and the NBA combined, that is, valued at $2.2 billion, amazing valuation for the WNBA, but almost a little undervalued at some points. Do you think there's a way that we will see that eventually be sold on its own?
Yeah, I think eventually probably you'll see an opportunity for there to be a separate valuation for the WNBA rights. That is something the NBA and the WNBA are very sophisticated about, how to position themselves. The story right now is the trend line, which is outstanding for the WNBA. You've seen what Caitlin Clark and others in the league have done. You've seen what's gone on with attendance, and most importantly, viewership. Viewership is what drives the valuation of these clubs, and it's what allows the athletes to get paid what they get paid. So I think they're well positioned right now. Time will tell whether it's separate or together they go to market with them, but it's a tremendous trend line for them.
You know, Frank, VP rightly brought up the media side of this. You've done a ton of work in the media space, and I think it's fair to say we are at a crazy inflection point of disruption when it comes to media and sports. Women's sports is obviously one element of it, and part of it is just how we consume sports. Where do we go from here as streamers, traditional broadcasters, social media all collide around this still booming business of the content around women's sports, or around sports in general, pardon me?
Sure. So, look, I think we are a sports-crazed nation.
Yeah.
And it's unique on the global scale how commercial our sports have become. And I think that's a positive for the strength of the leagues and the clubs, and then these athletes. What we're seeing right now is the advancement of technology, where it's not just your ability to watch sports on TV, but you can have those sports literally in the palm of your hand at all times, anywhere you go. You can watch a women's college soccer match. You can watch a volleyball match where there are 92,000 fans watching it. You have access to sports now constantly. What has happened, it's not just the media companies, traditional media companies that are bidding for those rights now. Amazon, Thursday Night Football, Apple with Major League Soccer. You're seeing what ESPN Plus is doing. You see what NBC intends to do with the NBA and the WNBA. It's not just on the TV, it's due to streaming opportunities that exist. So you're going to see increased competition for the right to these assets because people want to watch them. It is continuing to drive the financial model of the TV system. People want to watch them, so we will see more, I think, entrants in the market to compete for those rights.
Talk to us a little bit about, are we really seeing, some of these Paramount or whatever, Max, are they really willing to go into their pockets to approach their shareholders and bid for women's volleyball? Are you seeing that? I mean, is the money going to go there?
So I think the money goes there in a different way in the college side. The money is finding its way to student athletes, especially the non-revenue sports student athletes, via name, image, and likeness opportunities. But yes, I do believe that these media companies are looking at women's sports now, not as a consequence of the gate, meaning attendance at facilities, although that's important. They're looking at this from eyeballs. If you look at the NCAA championship, women's basketball last year outdrew the men. I mean, these are remarkable numbers. So this story tells itself. It's eyeballs, and money will follow eyeballs. So, yeah, I do think that women's sports are now probably undervalued in certain segments and businesses and certain leagues. And I think there'll be a great opportunity for them to make up ground as a consequence of better media rights deals.
Let's shift, if we can, from some of these fast-growing, smaller sports to one of the biggest legacy sports that there is, Major League Baseball.
Here we go.
Really interesting past couple years. This was a banner year across the board in terms of ratings. I would argue Major League Baseball got exactly the World Series it wanted, although probably Fox would have liked it to go 7 games instead of 5. But
also New York would have liked that.
And New York would have liked that too. But talk to me about sort of how that flows through. Viewership up. Yeah. This has not been the fastest growing league in terms of valuations. Sort of flow that through for us, how it affects the business of baseball.
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I'm a Yankees fan, so it was torturous to watch the series. So if you think about institutional money, which is coming into sports now, it's not just wealthy individuals. Institutional money is looking at these different assets, different leagues, and saying, what should we buy? Where's the best upside for us? Baseball's viewership, I think, since 2007 is down probably 10 million in gate and people attending. And some of the rules changes have made the game more exciting. You're also right. They had the ultimate in the World Series matchup with the Dodgers and the Yankees. I do believe institutional money is going to look at baseball now and think, hey, is there an opportunity here? Are these values low? I do know there have been multiple teams on the market that haven't sold. They haven't gotten to a valuation level that they would have wanted to, which is north of $2 billion. And so it's not just baseball in and of itself. It's against, should I buy a baseball team, a soccer team, a hockey team, right?
And now the NFL with private equity, being allowed to get in there, right?
Correct. And I think that will completely transform. This has been going on in other sports. Institutional money has been allowed in. Now it's in the NFL. Franchise values are skyrocketing. Baseball, I think now, because of a better product with the pitch count and some of the other rules changes, move the game along. I think they're probably now, those clubs are probably undervalued relative to the other institutional investment opportunities that exist in sports. So I think Major League Baseball will be one to watch in the next couple of years.
Frank, I got to ask you this because, we're talking about youth sports, we're talking about NIL, and now you're talking about where the institutional money thinks the best return on investment is across, call it, sports in general, women, women's, men's, youth sports, adult, whatever. So here's my question for you. You look at what's gone on with Middle East money heading into EPF and heading into, golf and, live golf and all that. And you look for the opportunity for deep-pocketed investors to disrupt an entire, sporting industry. And I think of college sports here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you had deep-pocket investors and you found a university and you were willing now to pay these college athletes, monies that they can't get anywhere else, and field an Alabama Crimson Tide like college football team. I mean, what's to stop them from doing that, given where the regulatory regime here is with regard to student athletes getting paid?
It's a really complicated issue. There are major concerns relating to whether student athletes are or are not employees. There are NLRB cases working their way through the system.
That's right.
CBAs. There are unionization concerns. I'm hopeful that we don't get there, that we ultimately get to some place where there's a commissioner of college football. Whether that should be the NCAA or outside is an important consideration. Remember that the top football teams in the United States, college, which is the second largest sport in the world, by the way, if you aggregate it after the NFL in value. But they're public institutions. So these public institutions are unlikely to accept private equity money to buy their sports teams. That is an unlikely outcome. So how does money flow into that system? It's largely been through these TV rights deals. But now what's happening is a consequence of the NIL opportunities for these student athletes. You have multiple millionaires, young men and women now, I think, will have the opportunity. They're millionaires while they're in college. And they will leave and they'll go to the highest bidder. That's good for college student athletes in football and basketball. But there's also a challenge for that for the non-revenue sports, which has been the foundation for our Olympic movement. Universities have been the foundation for supporting Olympic athletes. So there's so many dynamics at play here. The top football player, quarterback, how much is he going to make? The top women's basketball player, how much is she going to make? What about the women's field hockey player? What's going to happen there? Are those universities going to continue to support those sports? There is a lot that's in play right now in the next couple of years.
I think that's so interesting. I was in Paris this year at the Olympics, and there is that sense that all of these college athletes go into the Olympics and that's exactly their path, and they wouldn't be able to train if it weren't for, Texas giving them the platform, Stanford giving them the platform. So do you think that they will start having to have their own collectives, Olympic style sports? Is USA Rowing going to have to get involved into, college sports in the way that they have to create sponsors for both ways?
They already have. You have Olympic training centers at these universities. Some support track, some support, rowing, wrestling, whatever it may be, field hockey. You have that happening already, where there's major fundraising efforts to allow these student athletes to train, college student athletes to train with the Olympians or Olympic hopefuls. And you also have fundraising opportunities for those people that can train when they're done competing at these colleges and universities. That is underway. I think we will see more of that. And think about some of these matchups that you saw in the Olympics. Some of the best were in women's sports. Femke Bol, right, running against Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone. Those were epic competitions. And that helps the colleges and universities that sponsor those sports to have her training at their facility. So I think you're going to see more and more of that type of a model. We need to have that type of a model.
Our thanks to Frank Ryan for joining us. He's Global Co-Chair, Global Co-CEO, and the Americas Chair at DLA Piper. Up next, how a former director of performance for the New York Knicks and Los Angeles Lakers has been developing a new all-natural sports beverage and how he's looking to get the NBA to buy in. For my colleagues Jason Kelly and Vanessa Perdomo, I'm Damian Sassower, and you're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks for joining us on the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Damian Sassower, along with special guest host Vanessa Perdomo of Bloomberg Originals and Bloomberg US sports business reporter Randall Williams, Michael Barr, and Scarlett Furoff. Mubarak Bar Malik is the co-founder and CEO of a new sports drink company called Barcode. And he's taking what he's learned as director of performance for the Knicks and Lakers to help grow the brand. Here now to talk to us about the venture is Bar Malik himself. Bar, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, really excited. I'm always honored to be on Bloomberg. We were there a few months ago with Jadakiss for his flavor launch, but Barcode Performance Water is taking off. We were just most recently nominated by BevNet for one of the Best of 2024 awards, and it could be in the categories of either founder, flavor launch, or just brand. So really exciting times for the company that started actually in New York just 4 years ago, around this time. I started my career in sports, and I majored in sports science and sports nutrition. And, through my hours of spending time with basketball players, over the last, past 10 years and being the head of performance with the Knicks at the time, nutrition is the cornerstone to wellness and health. And, Barcode Performance Water is the code to health, because what you consume, what you put in your body, allows you to be the best version of yourself, whether you're playing a basketball game or just living, or playing the game of life. I just felt like we needed to provide better beverages for people that have, access, to better nutrition, better quality and products. And why not, put together a brand that is derived out of sports science and, efficacious through, the best nutrition and the best vitamins and minerals your body needs to be healthy. And then, brand it with sports and the culture. And I felt like, Barcode is the leader in the performance water space because of the conglomerate of people that are involved. And I'm just excited as a founder to be here because, it started from sports and now has evolved into one of a, category disruptor in a space that's very diluted and archaic. And I feel like, our beverage is a trendsetter and is setting the pace for what, it means to be better. And we have that product with Barcode, and I'm excited to discuss it here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear more about how you're trying to break up that space because, like you mentioned, it is a very crowded marketplace for sports drinks. So when you go to athletes and you approach people and new partners, what are those things that you bring to them and say that this is different and this is, something that you haven't really experienced before? It's creating a gap in the market that was there.
I think first and foremost is the formulation and the ingredients. I think, typically, and me having a different background and looking at it from the inside out, typically, a lot of sports beverages are just beverages in general. You look at the cost to source the ingredients, the cost on shelf, and then you typically try to model it after your competitors, which means you're trying to get into the market as fast as you possibly can with the cheapest ingredients and the cheapest cost to beat out, the Gatorades and Powerades, whereas what happens there, you lose the integrity of what you're building. And because this product wasn't built in like a marketing, experiment, it wasn't built in a focus group. This was built, on the sidelines in real time with real athletes. And this is what athletes consume. On TV, you might see different logos, you might see different things, you might see taped bottles on the sideline. And that is because typically what's in these bottles is some type of electrolyte formulation, B vitamins, low sugar, no sugar at all at times, probably. And coconut waters and all these other mixes that are, put together so players can be healthy and hydrated, not just during the game, but also, during travel and also in the recovery hours. So Barcode is consumed in real time. And because of the structure of the ingredients, the go-to-market strategy when we launched, it wasn't going after Gatorade, it wasn't going after Body Armor, because we didn't have the cost at a place where we could even compete. So we decided to really just sink our teeth into sourcing the highest level of ingredients over time, scaling it so the cost to make it, starts to come down. And then stay very disciplined into, our market strategy of who's buying the product so that we don't have to cheapen the ingredients day one. So when we go into our partnership conversations and we talk about why are we disrupting an industry and why are we differentiated compared to what you've seen in the past, is one is we've taken the stairs, to get to a place where we can even compete on shelf with some of these more iconic, products that we have seen that has been there for 20 years at a cheaper cost. But now we're able to compete at a price because of the time it took to get to scale the product without losing the integrity of the ingredients. So the vitamin D is sourced from the highest possible supplier for vitamin D, and it's plant-based. And the magnesium is the highest quality magnesium. It's not artificial. The ashwagandha is the best, grade of ashwagandha you can have. It's Whole Foods compliant. And then you have, reverse osmosis filtered water. You have coconut water. You have low sugar. You have monk fruit. It's all these things that are put together that, just from a health perspective, you're going to get it in this product. And then over time, the taste, you start to kind of, enhance the taste to make it more commercialized. So it's not, there isn't a bitter aftertaste to it, because you've learned from consumer feedback that this is okay. This is the palate that needs to meet the needs of a sports player. This is the palate that needs to meet the needs of, Vanessa at Bloomberg, who doesn't play sports, but she goes to Pilates.
Whoa.
Play sports.
Athlete over here.
But my point is women who don't play sports, can, and you have the cost, can our distributors and our retail partners, can they make money off of selling the product because the margin profile is high without diluting the ingredient panel? So it's already different because of how we source it. And then when you talk about the number of athletes who are connected to the product, we have the biggest names, from Victor Wembanyama to Derek Fisher. I mean, you have Hall of Fame coaches and players to the face of the NBA as investors and partners with the brand because of this is what they consumed, on the sideline. Derek Fisher was a coach in New York in 2013, 2014.
Bar, let me ask you this. Let me cut in and ask you this. What is your pitch to athletes and sports people when you're trying to get them on board with this? Because there are a lot of sports brands out there that aren't necessarily sports drink brands, but they're looking for investors, they're looking for partners. When you get someone like Victor Wembanyama, and I think Kyle Kuzma has an interesting place within sports culture as well, and then Jadakiss as well. What is your pitch to get these guys?
Or even Carmelo Anthony, who's an investor. I mean, look, here's the thing. In sports teams, right, the reality of a sports team, the people the athletes spend the most time with, or even not even the people, if you pick one person that the head coach relies on for information and or the players spend the most time with, it is usually an athletic therapist or a performance or strength and conditioning coach. They spend all their time with the sports medicine team, from recovery to treatment to post-game to travel. Everything that the team is organized around is around the performance and wellness of a team. So my pitch to athletes and teams is look, I sat in that role for 12 years. I have a master's degree, in human performance. I spent, all this time with the Knicks with excellent people and just players. And if I didn't leave the game to create a company that I felt like was better than, the pundits that we have seen over the years, it would be me giving you this product. I would give you this product on the sideline because this solves a lot of issues for the training staff, sourcing out powders and gels and electrolytes. This is a one-stop shop within a product that if I was working on any sideline within the NBA, NFL, or MLB, or even in MLS or soccer, I would be the person giving you these products. And if I had a product to bet on, it would be something that had the quality of these ingredients in it that didn't, create other secondary problems because you wanted to consume it, outside of the pitch and or the court or the field. And that's the game. It's like, look, why don't you become a part of a brand that your players will actually invest in and drink and consume from a team's perspective? They're not going to drink the other products because it's not that healthy. Why don't you partner with a team that, a brand that can provide real substance to your players in real time? And then for athletes, it's like, look, is availability is the name of the game, right? If you can stay healthier for longer periods of time, you can make more money over the course of your career. You can take care of your family longer. That's all athletes care about. Literally nothing else is how long can I play? How much revenue can I generate? Can I take care of my family for 25 years off of playing for 10? Yes. In order to do that, is games played, is being available outside of being a good teammate and just being a good person. It's health. So why not consume things or be a part of things that you tangibly can use and promote and support because of the integrity of the product and also the people who are behind it, are experts in human performance. And that's the pitch.
Where do you think Barcode is going to be in the next 5 years? I think that if you are working this industry and you're familiar with the sports drink space, then you know that this brand has been on the rise for a minute. But when you foresee, let's say 2030, where is Barcode going to be? Where are people going to be able to find it?
Look, I think, over the next few years, you'll see us probably, partnering with a bigger, entity. A lot of these bigger conglomerates are looking for, a better for you, younger, hydration products. Since Body Armor sold for $8 billion a few years ago, everyone's looking for the next big product, and I believe Barcode is that product. I think, we will. You'll see us launching in national retailers that everyone's familiar with, like a 7-Eleven, Walmart, Costco, within the next 18 months. You'll see us, not just on the coast. Right now, we're currently only in California, New York, New Jersey, Texas, and Florida. But you'll start to see us expand into the middle of the markets, and you'll see us in bigger retailers. It's start to be a more, visual product that we won't just be speaking about here on the coast, but more in the middle of America and part of, the community of people, who don't necessarily, care about some of the mushrooms and plant-based ingredients. They just want better for you products. And I think, having the ability to scale down, you'll see us, with a bigger national footprint. You'll see us with bigger retailers. You'll see us partner up with, a bigger entity who has, bigger distribution channels, a lot more, cash flow and revenue where we can, leverage their network of influence on the distribution and supply side. And then you'll see us probably in Europe, whether it's London or Paris, but you'll see us in one of the European markets because we have the opportunity with Wimby to be over there.
Our thanks to Mubarak Malik for joining us. Once again, he's co-founder and CEO of Barcode Performance Water. And that does it for this week's edition of the Bloomberg Business of Sports. A special thanks to this week's guest host, Bloomberg Originals chief correspondent, Jason Kelly. Jason Kelly, Bloomberg Originals sports correspondent, Vanessa Perdomo, and Bloomberg US sports business insider, Randall Williams. Tune in again next week for the latest on the stories moving big money in the world of sports. You're listening to Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world. And don't forget to catch our podcast on all your podcast platforms.